oh gosh, I just did not know how to write dialogue at all at the time. And it was just exposition, exposition. If you're going to be an investor with a film, you're going to be part of this relationship for quite a while. I'm not gonna bad name any festivals, but after I saw that does happen, that's why I think it's so smart for people to make connections, talk to other people who have gone through it.
Why is story your North Star?
It's very interesting. From a very young age, as long as I can remember, I have used imagination just to see the world, and I think a lot of people do. I grew up outside of Buffalo, New York, in the rural parts, in corn country and dairy fields, and I was an only child. So I just had all these forests around me, and there was a creek bed, and I would spend my days, because my friends weren't super close to me all the time. I would see them at school, but for the most part, I was by myself. And so I'd run out into the woods, just like this wild, feral child, and I would create up stories in my head to entertain myself, because I didn't have other people necessarily around besides my mom and dad. So I think that was really the kernel of it. And my mother is a writer as well. She's also a registered nurse. There were always books in the house, VHS back in the good old days. And so we always had movie nights. We would go to the drive-in a lot as a family. And story was just a part of my life up from the time I was a little kid. I was always in school musicals, reading about the different theater companies all around, and it percolated, and I just loved it. I knew even as a young kid, like, oh, I want to get into this.
What elements make up a great story?
I think that when you touch on basic human conditions, and I can't define them because they're different for every person, but a good story for me is when it touches on things like love and hate and jealousy and compassion and the spectrum of what humans feel. And there's a myriad of ways that one can tell story and have different aspects of that. And for me, I have always been driven to stories not regarding the genre of it, but if it can make me laugh, if it can make me cry, if it can make me scared, if it can make me enticed and move forward and lean in, to me, that's a good story. It's asking the questions of why now? What is the arc of these characters, and why do they need to go through this journey? If you can answer those in a satisfying way for the audience, to me, that's good art.
Do you remember stories growing up, Watership Down or Judy Blume or Ramona Cleary, anything like that, books, film that really touched you?
That's always a hard question. There's so much good literature and films and plays out there. I think it was a musical, actually, was my first experience that really made me feel real emotion. And it was in Toronto. My parents had ordered tickets to Phantom of the Opera. My mom got me this black velvet dress, and my dad got me a little fake diamond bracelet, and they got us really good seats in it, and I think I was 8 years old. And we were sitting there, and spoiler alert, when the chandelier falls from the ceiling, he had bought the tickets like exactly where the chandelier was going to fall and then have that crescendo across the stage. And I had no idea, but I was so enamored by the story itself, and then to look up and I saw that chandelier rattling, and it was just fear, and it was that moment, like I said, of leaning forward. And I was like, wow, this can make me feel something that as an 8-year-old, I don't really get the chance no offense with the Music Man, but like, or Oklahoma, but they didn't really make me feel those things. And I think that was really the first time was the theater that made me feel that. And there were Judy Bloom, she wasn't a favorite of mine. I just watched the film Dear God, It's Me, Margaret, Can You Hear Me? And that was a good one. It's not my normal genre, but I thought it was really wonderfully done. So I know she's a great artist. But like I said, we had books all over the place, so I really read. I was reading like Jane Austen as a young kid and just bigger books that probably weren't necessarily appropriate for my age, but both my parents wanted me to just have the scale of what could be possible.
What drives you to tell stories and see them performed?
I never came from a place of being hubristic. Hubristic, is that a word? If it is, I just made it up. As a writer, you can do that.
Sure, yeah, exactly.
I never felt like I needed to be a big star. It didn't come from a place of needing people to look at me or be famous or anything. It never ever felt that way, even to this day. To me, I wanted to see story and create stories that could be performed or witnessed or read by others as a form of connecting with other people. And maybe that's because I didn't have a lot of connections growing up, and it was my way to tell stories and to just to have people feel something. And a lot of times when I tried to have conversations with kids my age, it was challenging because I didn't get it. And I had I spoke with a lot of people that were much older than me. We just felt more on the same level. So, yeah.
Yeah, I also am an only child, and I know I've had all sorts of crazy, wild stories. And one thing about being an only child, I mean, I can only speak for myself, is that you can just entertain yourself for hours, and it's not like you need other interaction.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And in fact, sometimes we prefer being by ourselves, at least I do.
Sometimes, yeah.
We have to force ourselves, to get out there. Like, oh, I have to see people today? Okay, How much did your mom influence you in being a storyteller?
My mom is a great influence of mine. Because she's a writer, she always wanted to be a writer, and she would write things for the Buffalo News, which was our local city newspaper, and other smaller newspapers in the area. She was continually working on different prose pieces in the form of short stories and novels. And that really influenced me because I saw her doing it. I saw her get published. I saw how happy she was, that, excited she was to put so much energy and heart and personal feelings into something, and then to get letters back from people in the community. Thank you for writing this. I feel the same way that you do. And I really felt proud of her. And she was always reading. She let me read pretty much anything I wanted in the house, except I think Helter Skelter was the one book I couldn't read. It was just too violent. She wanted to keep me away from excessively violent topics for a long time, which I understand and respect. So my mom always championed me. She's like, you can do whatever you want. And even now that I'm 39 years old, and it's been a while, it's probably been a good 30 years, we had a little bit of a brambly relationship growing up. I was daddy's girl, and she and I are both very creative and a little stubborn at times, and when we know something's right, it's right. And at 10 years old, we were getting in a fight about something, I don't know. I was like not cleaning my room right or something, and then I think my grades had been dropping down to B's, and she was just having a talk with me about it. And she's like, you understand that you have to go to school, and you have to do this to go, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, you don't have to worry about me. I know what I'm doing, and I know where I'm going. And I just looked at her dead center as this, 10-year-old, and my mom and I still talk about it to this day because, I mean, I was naive and being a little brat at the time, but I still carry that fervor with me. And I think a lot of that is because of her and having my mom in my life like that championed me.
That's a great story. Do you remember where she would write? Did she have a typing table or kitchen table? Where would she write?
She had a little office. Our house is very old. I think it was built in like the 1830s. So all the rooms in the house are really small. And so her office was small, and my dad was a carpenter and a welder and a plumber and he did a whole bunch of jobs, a truck driver. And so the two of them actually had won one of those sweepstakes where they come to your house. I forget what it's called. Where they come to your house with like balloons and a big check that says, you've won $50,000. And this is back in the late 70s, early 80s. Clearinghouse, I think.
Publishers Clearinghouse. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So she won.
Oh my goodness.
And so
wow.
They got to buy this little farmhouse, and it was very run down, but because my dad had all this skill set, he built her this little nook that had a long desk, all these shelves with books all lining the table. And so when it came time for her to write, when I wasn't driving her nuts, she would go into that room and she'd just shut the door, make sure I was fine, and that's where she would do it. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
But she always kept a notebook on her, I remember also. She was a caterer / registered nurse, and no matter what we were doing, there was always a notebook. And she was coming up with these ideas all the time, and anytime she had a flash, she'd pull over the car and be like, write something down, or at the kitchen table during dinner. And she loved mystery novels, and she always wanted to write a mystery novel. And I think this was before I was born, but she had written some sort of scene where somebody in the, like Agatha Christie style, someone had been murdered. And she had written down on a napkin this murder. And my father found it, and he thought that the way she had written it was about him. And so she looked at my mom one day, and he's like, "Do we need to have a talk?" And she's like, "No. This is for the novel that I'm working on." But it was constant all over the place.
Do you choose the stories to write, or do they choose you?
I think it's a little bit of both. I will read a newspaper clipping, or I'll read, when I was in college, I read the footnote of a textbook that I found very interesting, and it was just a little clip note, and I researched it, and it turned into a whole historical novel idea that has been tucked away for now, but I want to get back into it. So why was that in the textbook that I was reading? Why do I take an interest about something that happened in Germany at a hairdressing shop? Why? There are a few stories that I think I choose, and one that I hope we get to talk about is going to be my fourth feature film, Recluse, as a writer, director, and producer. And that is a psychological thriller, and it's about a high school orchestra teacher who has arachnophobia, severe arachnophobia, from when she had an experience when she was a child. And since then, she has become very reclusive and insular to the point of being debilitating. And so she decides that she's going to get exposure therapy to get over her fear, and she does. And it kind of unlocks this dormant darkness inside of her. And so people that were not very nice to her earlier in the film, she starts to feel the power that she wields inside, and goes from there. But I say that I chose that one because I am arachnophobic. I was arachnophobic. Arachnophobia, the movie, gave me arachnophobia. And in writing that screenplay, I had to study a lot of spiders from all over the world and find the themes that overlapped with what I was trying to do. And weirdly, it cured my arachnophobia. And I don't want them on me, but if there were a banana spider crawling across the desk right now, I'd be like, there's a banana spider crawling across the desk right now. Should we, let a cat out or something? And but yeah, so I think it's both.
Interesting. Yeah, and especially growing up in an old house, there's all sorts of crevices that critters, lizards, everything get into. And, oh, look, there's one, in the kitchen.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can understand that. But, wow, that's fascinating. So, and that is something that you are just in the writing stages of, or you're now getting toward producing?
It's completed in the writing stages. I've been working on Recluse for a good 7 years. It started off as a prose piece, like a novel. And then once I became more involved in film, I thought that it would be much better in film format. And many drafts later, I think it's very strong. We're working with a wonderful film and media company called Buffalo 8. We're having conversations with them, possibly going out to different people that can make the project happen with Cardinal Flicks, my independent film production company. So I feel really strong about that one. I think that, knock on wood, I have a good feeling that I'm going to take everything I've learned with all the other projects that I've done along the way and put my experiences and my education into this. I mean, I never went to film school. I didn't know what I was doing when I first entered this world, and I got so lucky that I met so many people that helped guide me along the way without judgment.
Right, and we have more questions on that in terms of the actual filmmaking. Just lastly, with this part, do you think being a recluse and being a writer go hand in hand, and sometimes they're developed out of mutual things? So with being a recluse, you can blame, well, I don't have to go anywhere today because I need to write. And you can find excuses for not having to go somewhere or be around people. And it's a very creative way to deal with it.
Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of writers that I've met and a lot of artists, they prefer to have a lot of solitude. But I think it's a balancing act. I think you need the solitude to get the work done, but you can't use that as a crutch or an excuse not to do other things, whether that's have a life or if you juggle many hats, being a director also or a producer, you can't just lean on the one thing. And my creative process so that I'm constantly staying productive is I'm most creative in the morning. And so I wake up early, around 7, 8 o'clock. I write till about noon, 1, until I start to fizzle out creatively. And then I go for a long walk. And then I know that I have an afternoon full of emails and phone calls and just all of that. So I have to be social as well. And I have to juggle those two things. So it really depends on the person and what their pursuits are.
Yeah, and being out in the world does feed all sorts of ideas that you would have never thought of just from being at the grocery store or just whatever, seeing somebody cross the street. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I love listening to people. I don't mean to be like a stalker and I never use anything, but hopefully we can talk about dialogue, because some of the best dialogue that I've ever come up with has been just being at a cafe or being down the grocery aisle, like you said, and listening to people, and it's just like, what are you doing?
What does the process of writing mean to you? What do you get out of it?
I get transformed into a different universe personally. It takes a little while some days to get to that other place, but what I get out of it is the ability to put myself into another person's shoes, body, mind, emotions, and live through their eyes, even if they're not necessarily a likable character. And when I get out of that space, I feel that it makes me a more compassionate human being because I am asking questions. Why would they do this? Why do they feel this way? Why are they doing this now? What did this person do to them? Why is this happening like right now? And even good people have flaws. So I think it's important to look at every character, and there are very few people that are just purely sociopathic. A lot of the characters that I write are damaged, and so to dig through the layers of just the top layers, I really do like to peel back, like they say, the onion, peel back all of the layers of a person to get to know the seed inside of them and what's been hurt and what walls have been built around it to protect that hurt. I think that's what I get out of it. It makes me communicate with real people differently and see them differently and not make judgments so quickly.
How often do you write?
It really depends on how busy we are with production. It depends if I'm directing something. I directed 3 feature films in 3 years, starting in 2022, so there wasn't an incredible amount of writing during that time because I was the writer, director, and producer. So and then we were also doing film festivals and traveling around a lot during COVID.
Oh, wow.
It was really challenging. I now have, I'm in pre-production for 2 films, which we can talk about in a second. And then I have the goal to finish 4 screenplays by January 31st that I started about 1.5 years ago. And those are in various forms of development. So writing a lot has been primary for me now because I know once the new year hits, it's going to be a lot of on-set work or pre-production work, shooting the films, and so on in pre-production.
How do you keep yourself on track? It sounds like you have some very specific deadlines for yourself. Mm-hmm. And how do you become your own taskmaster?
I've always been very rigid with myself. I have pretty high expectations, probably too high expectations of what I would like to accomplish. And so when I set a date, I want to at least get somewhat close to it. And I don't like being willy-nilly. I think it's very easy for people to fall into a pattern of procrastination. And I get it. It's hard. It's really hard work and you need a break. And sometimes you need to not look at something for a week or a month or whatever it is for you, but to always come back to it. And my producing partner, Brian Long, and I always joke, he says it's hard for him to take a break because he gets so accustomed to being peaceful and not thinking all the time about budgets and all the things that go into creating a film, that when after a week at, I don't know, the beach or something like that, having to go back and get back into it is almost worse. So if you stay in it, it's just easier because it's the routine. But I don't necessarily think that's very healthy. So I've been trying to manage doing healthier, fun things, taking a break here and there, going to a farmer's market, going for a hike up a mountain or something, going for, I don't know, Saratoga racetracks, which is, I love horses, doing fun things for ourselves and then coming back to it.
And in some ways, that's almost another fun form of work because you could be getting ideas and you're getting exposed to new environments.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, some of the best ideas that I've had come out of thin air. I wasn't expecting it. And then, so I have to leave myself open to those sources that I can't always control everything, even though I really want to. I can't control everything. And it's going to get done when it gets done. And that doesn't mean that I can just slack off. I have to continue to put in the effort. But if it doesn't get done on my deadline, that's okay.
Has anyone ever said to you, why don't you just take a break and relax?
All the time.
All the time, okay. What's your answer?
I don't have time to take a break.
Okay, oh, that's a good one, yeah, all right. Right, well, I know you, so go ahead, I'm sorry. Well, you've talked about some sacrifices that you've had to make as a filmmaker, as a writer. We'll talk about those later. But yeah, I was just curious, as someone that is very driven, do other people see you and maybe they have their own agenda? Maybe they're like, ooh, she's going to outwork me, or wow, you're working really hard, I'm worried about you, or whatever it is. And
yeah, I think there's two sets of people, or maybe even three sets of people. There are my close friends who are like, you need to come out to LA and, hang out with me and eat really bad food and cook and go for walks with my dog and, hang out and take a break. There are other people who see the hard work that you've done, and I don't like to be cruel and say ride your coattails, but they see that there's an opportunity there, and so they try to get in, even though I'm not anywhere close to really, I'm just me and I'm just working hard, but they kind of want a free ride, and that's not very cool. And then I have my, like I said, half my family lives in France, and I went to go visit them recently, and they were saying in French, all you do is put work things on social media. They're Facebookers, because they're a little older, and they're like, all you do is work, travail, travail, travail. And it's just like, je sais, I know, well, I'm gotta work, I gotta pay the bills. But it was nice to be there for 10 days, and they're like, you're too skinny. So they cook for me, and they take me to the zoo, and just, I don't know, do all the things to help me chill.
But it also sounds like it's more than just money. This is what you've chosen your life to be. This is a lifestyle for you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of it's about money. I got to pay my bills just like most people.
Sure.
But I could pay my bills a bunch of different ways, and I have in the past. And I know, I don't know why I know, but I know that this is my calling. And like you had said before, I've known from the time I was a little kid, I've never wavered from storytelling. I might have not known the medium in which to do it. I tried journalism, prose, theater, a lot of theater, and then film just fell into my lap. And I was like, wow, this is it.
Where do you usually write? Do you have a particular writing style, place?
I have an office in the Pocono Mountains, and it's a 1-acre property at the end of a cul-de-sac surrounded by trees. I can't see my neighbors except for in the winter time. So it's pretty secluded. 80-minute drive to New York City, which I have to also spend a lot of time there. But I have an office with a big, beautiful window overlooking the woods. And there are deer all over the place, and chipmunks, and birds, and all sorts of wildlife. And it's very conducive to creativity. And I have a huge bookshelf, and that's where I tend to write for the fall, the summer, and the spring. When January comes around, mostly January and February, I try to find a location where I can go off alone for 5 weeks and be really, really, really secluded. One of my most fantastic experiences doing that, Carson McCullers, who was a wonderful prose writer, short story writer, essay writer. She wrote many pieces. The Heart is a Lonely Hunter is one of her most famous ones. And she has 2 houses, one in Nyack, New York, and one in Columbus, North Carolina. And every year they give out a grant to someone to stay at her childhood home in North Carolina. And I got to stay there, and I didn't get the grant, but we became friends with the people who do the grants. And that was so wonderful just to be in this. It's now a history museum, and all of her young photos are everywhere upstairs and down. On the lower level was her old bedroom, and there's a fireplace, and there's a nice big desk and a nice big kitchen. So I could just write all day, take walks, cook, think, read, whatever I wanted to do without any of the pressures of life coming in.
Wow, so it's once a year they give out this grant?
It's once or twice. I forget what it is. But yeah, Carson McCullers. And we became friends with her after Karen Allen, who we collaborate with. She did a short film that was based off of Carson's short story, A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud. And that's how we came to know about Carson McCullers' estates.
And sorry, is it open at other times for the public to walk through? You said it's a museum at times? Oh, wow.
I don't know about her house. She grew up down in Columbus. She lived her more adult life in Nyack, New York. And so I don't know if that's necessarily a museum, but they do have dinner parties and different events in Nyack as well.
Wow, something about writers and old houses.
Our
I don't know what it is.
Our minds just go, yeah.
I wouldn't know anything about it. Yeah, okay. Wow, I want to look that up. That's really cool. What are your favorite writing questions you ask yourself when you're beginning a story, when you're going back to revise a story?
I ask myself, why do you want to tell this story? What part of the human element, what are about the characters that interest you? What are the juxtaposition of those characters? How are they going to create friction? How are they going to create fiction with one another? What's dramatic about it? What is the arc? What are the lessons to be learned? And again, to ask the why now, why in general, why these people? What makes them so important to a greater idea? And why is anyone going to care when it's finished? And do I care enough about these characters and their situation that they're put in to stay with it in the long run, even if it's going to take 5-6 years to make it happen? So those are the things that I sit down with, because I get ideas all the time. But you really have to love each story like it's your baby.
And you've said at times you don't necessarily always like the character, or maybe you, at first glance, you wouldn't like the character until you dig deeper and find out some of the reasoning behind their choices.
Yeah, I want to search. I want to go through the labyrinth of their mind and their life experiences and figure out why they've locked some precious, vulnerable thing away in an oubliette inside of them. And once I can look through those corners of that character and find it, I'm like, oh, that's the pain. And this is how it's manifested. And that doesn't let them off the hook for the actions that they've done, but it almost makes them more human, which can be scary and uncanny, because I think that people can understand that kind of hurt, whatever that hurt may be. And so they're not just a monster in the dark. They're not the boogie person. They're someone that has a tragic, flawed past, and this is the outcome.
And how is writing connecting with others?
Just like my mom would get letters when she wrote for the newspaper, or short prose pieces that she got published in Writer's Digest, which was a magazine. I think it's still a magazine. She taught a class, or she had a professor that she was learning from use one of her examples in prose writing. And I think having that knowledge that you're not alone, and that the things that you feel, good and bad and everywhere in between, other people feel that way too. And the more you can communicate about those things, the better. And a beautiful example of that was my first feature film that I co-wrote with Florencia Lozano, and I directed and produced with my production partner Brian Long, and that was in 2020. And I was so out of my depth. I just jumped in the deep end of the pool. I'm like, I'm going to do this. And it was right before COVID got announced, so we were luckily a little bit in a bubble. But the story Life After You is inspired by a book called Life After You, What Your Death from Drugs Leaves Behind, written by Linda Latterman. And her family lives in New Jersey, and they found their 19-year-old son, Danny, dead in his bedroom from an overdose of heroin that was laced with fentanyl. And no one in the family knew he was using. He hid it very well. They think that he was in the very beginning stages because there were no signs of anything. There were a few things that were missing, like a family heirloom of his dad, Tito Latterman's. So Florencia and I decided that we wanted to tell the true story of what the Lattermans went through after they found their son, and how the community around them, they lived in the suburbs, reacted to it. The way that the family, there was an older brother, older daughter, and then the mother and father, how each of them suffered from grief differently, and how they stayed together as a family. And they really worked with Florencia and I very well. And when we finally finished shooting it, Florencia was also the star in it, and she won so many awards because she's beautiful. When we finally finished shooting the film and locking it and doing all the sound and totally locked version, Linda and Tito Latterman were the first people that we were going to share it with. And they're this wonderful Italian family, so they didn't just invite like 1 or 2 people or watch it alone. They invited like 30 people and like put it on the TV. And I knew that they were going to be screening it that night, and I was having a heart attack because here it is our job to tell one of the worst moments of their family's life, and to get it right with compassion and honesty. Especially because this is happening everywhere. And that's what Linda wanted to say. She wanted to scare the heck out of kids with her book by saying, like, this is what happens. And I think she did a great job with it. So it was juggling that. And she called me the next day, and she said that we had done it. And it was such a profoundly amazing moment. And so that was the first step. And then when we started taking it to festivals, and we did screenings across the country, and we would always have talkbacks afterwards for the viewers. And we would always have a person from the community who specialized in addiction prevention and education and recovery, and always had somebody there at those talkbacks, and had Linda and Tito would come a lot of times, Florencia would come a lot of times, I was there. And it was so beautiful to see how many people would speak about their own personal experiences, and sometimes there were tears, sometimes there was laughter, and either they were going through it, they knew somebody who was going through it, they had lost, someone had died who was an addict and overdosed. And the more we did, it was overwhelming. And that was the power of writing, and that was the community of writing. And that's what, good storytelling in any form, whatever subject, does. It brings people together.
Sure. You just, in talking about this, you jog my memory of the book Go Ask Alice, which is from, I believe, the late 60s. And I hadn't known until recent that there was actually not a true story. It was basically done to scare young people away from drugs at that time. And so, yeah, I remember reading this life. It was basically a found diary of this woman who didn't escape drugs and what she went through and trying to get off of them. And so, yeah, it's very powerful.
I'm very happy that it's starting to be addressed now, especially the fentanyl. But I mean, it's more than just fentanyl. It's the addiction and why people become addicted to whatever. It's what's those are the conversations that we should and are starting to have. So that brings me a lot of hope.
Yeah, and part of the book, just to wrap up, was that she wasn't able to escape the friend group that kept pulling her back in, and that was a big part of her.
Yeah.
Wanting to be accepted, wanting certain guys to like her, and so then being part of that world, and then she wasn't able to get away from it when she wanted to. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's very common in life. Yeah. Can you think back to a great writing day, and what was it that made it so great?
A great writing day was when I was first learning how to write stage plays. And I had been in New York for a while. I had been part of the independent theater scene. I had met my producing partner, Brian Long. He was the managing director at Rattlestick Playwrights Theater. And they had such supreme talent there. When I first got there, they were doing a three-hander with Vanessa Redgrave, Jesse Eisenberg, and another talented actor, and his name is escaping me right now. But it was at the Cherry Lane Theater before A24 bought the theater. And it was in a 200-seat house, and it was just magic. And so I was slowly learning. I had a lot of embarrassing moments because I was meeting these kinds of actors in this echelon, and they were just great writers, and Jesse had written the play. He's a beautiful writer, an actor. And I would have a lot of readings at my apartment, and oh gosh, I just did not know how to write dialogue at all at the time, and it was just exposition. And I was still learning. I was determined to go to every Rattlestick play and talk with actors and keep just making bad writing. And this one day, I got into an argument with my partner, and he said we were on the subject of end of life topics, and he was saying if I were to ever get very sick, I wouldn't want you to see me that way, and we'd break up. And we had been together for, I don't know, 3 or 4 years by then, and we've been together now for going on 13, so we stayed together. But I remember just being so angry that it was just not my choice at all either, because we loved each other. And I went and I was just I can't look at you right now. And I went into the shower and I got lathered up, literally, and I came out of the shower, got dressed, went into my office at the time, and I wrote down our whole conversation that we had almost verbatim. And it ended up being the first scene in the play, which is called The Stage of Twilight, which is loosely based on that conversation, and also my father getting sick when I was 15 years old with Hodgkin's lymphoma, which is cancer. And then his ultimate death when I was 21, and that whole experience of watching him suffer. And how embarrassed he was to suffer, because he was this blue-collar, hardworking, very respected man in the area that we lived, and I think it was really hard for him. And so that play was based off of that, but I think that was the proudest moment, is because I not only wrote a scene that the dialogue was good, I say that humbly, but it was pretty good. And it was just exciting. And I started to think bigger about the project. And I started to think about my dad and making notes and putting things together of how the arc could be based on these two narratives. And eventually it became a full-length play that Karen Allen became involved with. She's the star. And did a lot of readings all over the tri-state area, up in Dorset, Vermont, and Berkshire Theater Group in Massachusetts, and Cherry Lane Theater and Rattlestick in New York City. And we were so close to getting it produced when COVID hit, and theater just went to sleep for a while. But that led to me turning it into a screenplay. And that was the second feature. So again, it's like you can make all the plans in the world, and what do they say? God laughs. And it's supposed to happen how it's supposed to happen. And if you're pliable, then it'll happen when it's going to happen.
And do you feel that that story was closer to you than any others you've written? Or no, this just was just one part of your life that you wrote about?
Each one of the stories that I've written have some aspect clearly that I feel emotionally tied to. Certainly the actual story itself, especially when dealing with watching somebody become ill and all of the things that happen when they're terminally ill, was very personal. And when you care about somebody so much and how that affects the people around you, and asking questions, who has the right to decide when, where, how you die? There's no wrong answer there, and there's no right answer there. And personally speaking, I think my dad would have loved to have some of those conversations when he was really ill at the end, but I don't know. I do remember that I put some conversations that we had in both the play and the film. And one of those questions I asked him is, are you afraid to die? And he said, I have everything that I've ever wanted in my life. I have my home, I have your mother, and I have you. And I have good friends. What else do I need? And I thought, wow, what a beautiful man. What a beautiful sentiment. And so in that regard, that is very personal for me.
Let's stop there. Wow. How do you know when you're working on the right idea?
I know that it's right for me at this time in my life when it won't get out of my head. I can't stop thinking about it. It keeps calling me. And when I know that I'm thinking about it, even now having a conversation with you, I have in the back of my mind, I'm like thinking about, that's actually a good idea about that character. Maybe I should write that down in the car when I get out of here. So when I have like little nuggets like that, I'm like, it's probably right now. And then when I get that excitement to sit down, even if I'm stuck and have a writer's block, if I sit down at my desk and I start from the beginning and I try to get back into the flow of the story, and I'm still excited about what I've written, ideas come. Or if I'm out walking and I'm just thinking about things that are tripping me up right now or not making sense, if I still care, then it's right for me. It's right for me right now. So that's how I know.
And aside from caring, is it also like, is there a curiosity that won't leave you alone?
Yeah, definitely a curiosity. I become attached to these characters like they're real people, and it's kind of like looking, what's the phrase, looking behind the looking glass or something like that, where I'm just watching them and I'm like, I have to know how the story ends. I need to know where they end up. I can't just leave them out in limbo. So there is a curiosity there.
And old news stories, things like that, do you become sort of fascinated? I know I find myself very intrigued.
If they're relevant to the narrative, then I will do a lot of research and go back and try to find as much information about those people as possible. Because sometimes there's a lot of great quotes from people you would never even think of, and then it sends you off into a tailspin in a whole different direction, and then it's your duty as the writer or the storyteller to like rein it back in so that you're not like bursting like confetti all over the room. But you can follow the rabbit hole for a little while, but always make sure that you're keeping it contained for your overall mission.
You had an interview on Authority magazine where the writer asked you several tips on what you wish you knew when you had started filmmaking. And I know you said previously you didn't actually go to film school. You do have a master's in writing and journalism. Number one, you said you will need to make sacrifices. I would love to hear what some of those sacrifices have been.
Yeah, like I said in Authority magazine, when you are so driven to succeed and you really, I want to make this my life's mission is be able to support myself. I don't need to be rich and famous, just to support myself by being a storyteller, writer, director, producer. And to get to that point is really hard as an independent artist. It's really hard to break into the industry and play with the bigger players and get the attention of the larger distribution companies that can be game changers for you. I think as we've gained more success, it's actually become harder and more sacrifices have had to be made because there's a lot more to do. Like I mentioned in Authority magazine, friendships. I can't always go to people's weddings or birthday parties or their child's anything, anniversaries. I can't go back to Buffalo to visit family as much as I'd like. Or I used to travel all the time in my 20s internationally. And I just can't do it, either for financial reasons or I just literally just don't have the time to be away for that long. Being able to see my family in France for 10 days was magnifique. It was so important to be back with loved ones and also to see a foreign land again. So those are some examples of things that I've had to give up. And so I think about that and what the payoff is and kind of making a pro and con list in my head. But I mean, those are the types of things that like I've had to give up over the years. Having a bigger house, having 2 cars, being able to go an apartment in the city, doing little things around the house to fix it up. So those are more materialistic things. So when I make a pro and con list in my head, those are things, that's stuff. And the relationships in my life I do miss. The people who really care about me understand that this is who I am and they're always there for me, like my friend here in LA. And we haven't seen each other in over 12 months, but we pick up like we haven't even been away. And we're planning to do something together coming up. And so the people that really care about you and care about your goals, they stay in your life no matter what. And everything else is just stuff. And the writing aspect and the creating aspect and the connecting and community stuff that I try to do, that Cardinal Flicks tries to do, I think is much more important of a light. It's not just about me, it's about me and others as a whole.
Do you think it's hard to make friends being in the film industry because you are around like-minded people for a short time on a set, but then everybody goes their different ways? And then being around people that aren't in the industry, it's just hard to connect because it's just a different lifestyle.
I find it harder to connect with people who are not in the industry because they don't understand just how much work goes into it and the whole process. So I've had several awkward conversations with people. If we go out to dinner, there's just this like awkward silence when I start to talk about some of the stuff that I'm doing, which is, I understand. It's impossible for me to explain. I've had to learn over several years. The people that I work with, especially the crew members, almost all of them come back for every shoot. So we feel like a family. And we pick up right from the start where we left off. And it's like we are constantly texting each other, hey, I'm doing this shoot. Do you have any recommendations for a script supervisor or a first camera person or an editor, whatever the job is? We're looking for an actress who is XYZ. Do you know anybody? And so we're constantly keeping in communication, even though it's surrounding work, but during those conversations we do, like, what are you doing? Are you like, what's been up with you? And that's nice.
Number 2, the highs can be very high and the lows can be very low.
Yeah, when you work together as a team and everybody really cares about a project and they're putting their blood, sweat, and tears into something, and you make a beautiful piece of art together, there's nothing more rewarding than that, because you did it. And the lows are hard because maybe you know, most of the time you don't have enough money or the amount of money that it would have to make your life easier to create that. And as the writer, director, and producer, a lot of those people don't realize I'm also the producer, so I'm thinking about a million other things that could go wrong. And that's very, very, very stressful. Because if like one thing goes wrong, obviously we have contingency, but the whole shoot could just go under, and that's constantly in the back of my mind. So that's one of the things that's difficult or a low. And also after you finish a project, maybe it doesn't get as much attention as you hoped for, or maybe because the budget was so small you had to cut scenes, or you couldn't do a scene or have as many shots as you wanted because you just simply didn't have the time or the money, the finances to do a 5-week shoot instead of a 4-week shoot. So you had to make a lot of changes. So those can be low moments because you know that you can do better if only this. And, you know, but you have to keep yourself buoyed and concentrate on the positive things.
And do you turn your attention to books, or you said hikes, being in nature, whether you're hiking with a friend or alone? How do you deal with those lows?
Yeah, I read a lot. I love reading. I love watching films, especially the oldies but goodies. Being in nature is always very peaceful and centering for me. Working out and just trying to get the endorphins flowing as much as possible, talking with friends on the phone and doing all that kind of stuff very much helps.
Yeah, something about talking to people on a landline, I feel like there's more of a connection. Mm-hmm. It's so hard with cell phones to actually feel that because there's a static or whatever. I don't know. I guess I'm dating myself with the landline, but it was just
such a landline.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's a clear. There's something where you feel more connected to the other person, I guess. Okay, and then number 3, there are a lot of wolves in sheep's clothing and hangers on.
I think that was part of my answer for there can be a lot of people that want to take advantage of your hard work, and they just kind of want to skip ahead of the line. And there's been a few examples in my life. It's not they're not the majority of people that I meet by any means, but if they think that they can get a step ahead by just knowing me, that I know this person, then they can get in touch with them, and it's just like no. Like I had to work to make that connection, like really, really hard, and it's so. And It's not me trying to like keep and not like share with other people, but it's difficult to, yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes sense because you don't also want to violate the trust of the person they're trying to get to.
Exactly.
And then, you have an existing relationship with that person. So then if you're just doing like, hey, I want to introduce you to so-and-so, which isn't a common ask, that can violate the trust of the other person. So that's understandable.
It often happens with talent, especially bigger name talent. And if I simply have a working relationship with that person, then I'm like, you're going to have to go through their agent, or, you're going to have to go through the channels that I had to go through. If it's a crew member that's looking for a cinematographer, then I have no problem doing something like that. But it's when I know that the intentions are a little bit more, I don't know the word, they're, what would the word be? Just selfish, I guess, or just, again, trying to skip to the front of the line.
Sure. Understood. Number 4, do no harm and take no, and I'm going to clean it up, crap.
Yeah, I mean, this industry, the film industry, and I think the theater industry too, and the creative industry in general, it toughens you up. You get pulverized a lot metaphorically, and so it gives you tough skin. And what you always have to keep in mind is to keep yourself a good person and to be open to people and compassionate, and because the more open you are, the better creator you are. At the same time, to also know and have the courage to say respectfully no about something if you're feeling taken advantage of, or if you're not getting paid what you feel the hours that you're going to be putting in. So that's why I said, do no harm, do nothing bad to people, but also protect yourself.
I get the sense that fear doesn't rule you, or maybe I'm wrong.
I am afraid, for sure. I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of, but not failing others. I'm afraid of failing my own expectations. And I have to get better at that.
But it seems like I get the sense that you will challenge, even if you're intimidated by it, that you will find a way to take it on and work with it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, my mom, she's very strong like that. My dad is very strong like that as well. So I think I learned that from them. People like actor Karen Allen, whom I've known now for, I think, going on 10 years. I met her through Rattlestick Playwrights Theater. And she's a very, very tough individual as well. A lot of people know her from Raiders of the Lost Ark, Animal House, Starman, but she's had nothing was handed to her on a platter, and just having her as a role model also, it's really, really impressive.
Do you think people are ever intimidated by the fact that you do seem very just contained and you're, to outward appearances? Do people ever bump up against that and feel intimidated?
I think that I collaborate well with people. I always try to. I listen. A lot of the people that I work together with, they listen, and we both want the best end product. And that if I don't have the answer to that, then that's fine. And if they don't have the answer to that, then that's fine as well. So I don't know if I'm really self-contained. I see a little bit of tunnel vision sometimes, and I try to be better at not doing that so much.
What's the difference between a stage play and a screenplay?
With film, you don't need all those words because you can use the camera angles. You can have a close-up, you can have a medium shot, you can do a wide shot, you can move the camera, and so words don't even need to be said because you're actually allowing the actor the camera time. Like if I ask how you're doing and I'm really angry at you, I'm just gonna go, or something, right? Stupid example. I'm not an actor. But, we don't need to get into the whole thing. We can build up the narrative and the background and the exposition through camera. It doesn't have to be through dialogue.
Which did you write first, stage play or screenplay?
Stage play.
If both paid the same, which would you rather write? Or is it not about the money?
It's not about the money. I love both for individual reasons. For whatever reason, film fell into my lap, and it's what I know. I wouldn't say I don't know how to do it better. Writing a stage play is really hard, really, really hard to not be expositional and to show action through, obviously, actors' movement, but through dialogue primarily. That's really hard to do, especially if you have a limited setting, and to know how to break things up. And I think there can be a little bit more, there are more rules that help you create a blueprint with screenwriting, at least in my experience. One of my favorite books that I like to read is called Save the Cat by Blake Snyder, the late Blake Snyder, unfortunately. Sometimes it's people's cup of tea, other times they think that it's too formulaic. For me, it helped a lot for me to understand how scenes continually need to change and shift. It helped me break down what are character flaws, whether that character is the good guy, the hero, or the anti-hero, or the bad guy. And the book just really made everything digestible. And there have been other books that I've read just to get the flavor of the industry, and nothing really spoke to me. And when it comes to stage plays, I mean, there are books out there how to write a stage play. None of them really spoke to me. So what I do, and what has worked for me and helped me later years in life, is read over and over and over and over again the playwrights and the plays that speak to me. And I think that we share a common way of writing. Like Edward Albee, I love. He's very to the point and gets things written out. And Tracy Letts is another favorite of mine. And just, people like that, I will just reread my favorites, and that's how I learn.
Sure. What about also too watching a play or a movie that was a play or a playwright's version of a movie, like seeing how they incorporate dialogue and things like that?
So you're asking when a play is a stage play and then it's turned into a film?
Yeah, I'm thinking of, let's say, Birdman, or even like Come Back to the Five and Dime, Jimmy Dean, or whatever, where they sort of take the play and then they try to turn it into a movie, and seeing how they finagle different things.
Yeah, there are a lot of great examples of either movies that take something that was only on the stage and then put it into film format, like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, or August Osage County is another great example. And then there are movies that were put onto Broadway, like To Kill a Mockingbird, and then you have that hybrid that you're talking about, Birdman, that I don't believe it was a stage play first. Do you know? I
don't think it was. Yeah.
So it's
I'm
a
just
hybrid.
Lumping it in.
Yeah, it's a hybrid, and I think that's so cool. And even with things like dance, the movie with Natalie Portman, Black Swan, the ballet movie, that deals with a lot of movement and everything that you would see on a stage, but it's actually a film. And with my upcoming film Recluse, it's about orchestra and it's about violin players, and I intend to incorporate a lot of the stage performances along with the things that I've learned in the film industry and try to have that hybrid experience for people.
Yeah, just watched August Osage County. Hadn't actually seen it until recent, and what a film, and so many emotions go through you. I don't want to give it away for anyone who hasn't seen it, but yeah.
Have you read the play?
I have not.
It'd be an interesting thing to see, to compare the two of them, to see what you know of the movie and then how it comes out on the page. Tracy Letts did a really great job because he kept a lot of the dialogue from the play, and that's hard to do without making people snore, but he did it.
If you were teaching a class on writing a stage play, what would you want the students to know?
Read everything you can get your hands on and go see everything you can afford to pay. And I would be talking to the administration trying to get funds so that the kids didn't have, or the younger people didn't have to be doing that to pay for it. That really helped me. And just like you were asking, how do I know if a story is speaking with me or it's the right moment or right story for me? make sure that you're in love with the subject, because you're going to be spending innumerable hours with these characters and with this scenario. And you're going to hit dead ends, and you're lucky if you do hit a dead end, because if you do, then the audience is going to hit it with you. And if you can figure out how to get yourself out of that corner, the audience is never going to see it coming. And that's what's going to make it very intriguing.
Do you think there's a difference between like local community theater and the investment in the story versus something, you said you went to see Phantom of the Opera and it sounds like a wonderful night out, but it's maybe a different audience?
Yeah, the glamour of Broadway and West End or West Bank and, you know, of the bigger theaters, that's one thing. The independent and the community theater is a whole different thing. Where I have a place in the Poconos, Pennsylvania, they have community theater there, and the actors are great, and that's an experience. In New York City, a place like Rattlesnake Playwrights Theater or some of the other smaller, more intimate black boxes that have 100 seats or 200 seats, you're right there with the actors. You can see them sweating. You can see them spitting. You can see them messing up lines and thinking, oh shoot, you know, in their head, and then and the other person like looking at them and they're trying to get back on track. So it's just like all the little micro details that you can see. And I think that that's different than Phantom of the Opera or the bigger like Moulin Rouge. And, you know, it's just a spectacle and it's beautiful and there's a place for it in the world. But if you're looking for a much more intimate situation, community theater and independent theater, I think it's pretty neat.
If you had to teach another semester of those same playwright students screenwriting, what would you teach?
So if it was the second semester, then hopefully a lot of their dialogue would have been better. And so I would then ask them to adapt the play that they wrote for the first semester into a screenplay. And I would probably give them Blake Snyder's Save the Cat because I think it's very digestible. And I would teach them the difficult lesson of having to cut dialogue that you worked so painstakingly for, and to really understand what is pushing the story forward, because that's the only thing that's important. Does this section create action and a reaction? And when I say, you know, a story or a scene turning, or an action creates a reaction causes an action, you know, positive, negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. That's how you form a great arc of a story, whether that's theater or film. It's just a different medium of doing it. So teaching them how to use the lens more and to show emotion through the lens rather than through dialogue would be the thing I would focus on.
I know we talked about August Osage County just previously. Is there a certain play to film you would use in the curriculum for this class? One that you think is just a brilliant transition from stage to screen?
I guess one that I would suggest, because it's almost all dialogue, is Edward Albee's The Zoo Story. It's about a husband on the Upper West Side, Upper East Side, who goes to Central Park to read the newspaper, and he meets a very colorful character who tells him all these wild stories. And it would probably just be a short film, but I think it would be interesting to read the stage play, because there's barely any action. It's just this guy in the park talking. So it's like, how would you tell the same story through the lens? I think that would be interesting. A very nice challenge.
Kind of like a dinner with Andre,
yeah,
where someone's just talking the entire time while the other person's eating or drinking or whatever.
Yeah.
But so how would you do that? Yeah, that is interesting. Mm-hmm. Which is more challenging, trying to get a stage play put together or trying to get a script produced into a movie?
I think I don't know which is more challenging. I know that you have more opportunities to make a recruitment with films, especially feature films, because a lot of times you have investors and you're trying to make deals with distribution companies. There's a back end to that, like there's distribution. With a stage play, it has its run, and if you're lucky, it gets great reviews. If you're really lucky, it gets on Broadway, and it has a life of its own. But with theater, you can only go and see it in person, and you can tape it, but it's a little different. With film, you can make it into DVDs, you can have it streaming, you can have all these things. So the opportunity to pay back your investors is higher. I don't know if that answers your question.
Sure. But then the immediacy of the audience's reactions, even if you don't talk to them after the screening, or the performance, but just to feel the tension in the audience in certain moments.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's got to be very powerful for a writer.
Yeah, it is very powerful, and I chose to create, with my producing partner, Brian Long, Cardinal Flicks, Inc., which is our independent film production company, because we had another company with theater, but that was really hard for us to keep afloat. And with Cardinal Flicks, we decided that we had much more opportunity to connect with people and to reach out. And when I say connect with people, we have a lot of we believe in helping the communities that we shoot in. And for example, we're working with the mayor of Scranton, Pennsylvania, Paige Cognetti, and we're having different events coming up, and we would like the next 4 films to be shot in their community. And that brings a lot of business to the area, which is great. And we also have a lot of programs that would be beneficial to that community. We have a mentor program, it's called, and we take for each shoot 25 students or young people under the age of 25, and we bring them to the set for a day, and they get to watch the director, they get to watch the crew, have lunch with us, ask questions, do all of that. There's the female director program where 2 early stage female directors will come on set for 2 weeks, work with me directly, or worked with whichever director is going to be on the film. And so they get that experience and get to make connections that way with the industry. We have an emerging producer program where 2 younger people up-and-coming producers come right onto the team from the very beginning. They get to see from soup to nuts how the whole production aspect works. And the last thing that we're going to start implementing on future shoots is Heroes for Lunch. And whatever community that we are working in, we are going to ask somebody from the area that is considered a local hero in whatever way, whether that's a police officer or a fire person, a teacher, a nurse, it can be anything, a person who works at a soup kitchen. And we're going to invite them to have lunch with the whole cast and crew and give them a whole speech about what they do for this area, just to pay homage and honor for those people because they're helping us. And so we want to give back to that community as well.
Wow, that's really cool. And how long has these different programs been going on with Cardinal Flicks?
Pretty much from Life After You. We started it. If you go to our website, cardinalflicks.com, it'll show you all of the different programs on our website and how they've been implemented with our past films.
How do you come up with the budgets for the movies you're making?
It's a long process, and my producing partner is the one who comes up with the preliminary budget, and then we sit down and talk about it. And with each shoot, we've learned a lot about which department needs what, if there are stunts needed, how many stunt people, how long each scene is going to take. So usually we start off with a very good first assistant director friend of ours named Amy Lynn. She's a good friend of Karen Allen's as well, from the Berkshires, Massachusetts. She's worked on tons of TV shows, tons of films. And we give her the script when we feel very confident about it. And we create our own breakdown. She creates a breakdown of everything. And then we compare and contrast, and then ultimately put it together. So that's anywhere from how many cast members are there going to be? How many days do you think we're going to need them on set? Catering, where we're going to put people up. Transportation. Those are just for the shoot itself. We're going to need location scouting. We're going to need permits. If you do street shots, you need permits. And if you're going to do a driving shot, you're going to need police force to stop the traffic on that road. So there's just so many things. It goes in pre-production, color, editing, sound mixing, music, all that good stuff. And you have to make sure that you leave enough for marketing and distribution costs when you find a distribution company that works for you. If you want to do the festival circuit, you're going to have to understand which festivals you're going to want to try to get into, why, and what that budget's going to look like. And if you want to travel to them, you have to have all that as well. So there are so many line items, and luckily the two of us have become better and better at it every year, and we're pretty spot on with it.
And are you choosing states with a tax incentive?
We have not been. We have mostly been choosing states that are very close to New York City because most of our cast and crew come from New York City. The few that are either from, there's been one from Atlanta and then a few people from Los Angeles, and we'll just fly them in. But Pennsylvania has been very good to us, which is why we've shot 2 of our films there. New Milford, Connecticut, also very, very good to us. And Scranton has just been unbelievably kind, and we're really hoping that we can find a home there for our next, for 4 films that we would like to do. We've also been going to St. Augustine. That's going to be our next project. It'll be Karen Allen's feature film directorial debut. She already did the short film A Tree, a Rock, a Cloud. And so there's a good chance that we're going to go down there and location scout, lock up some deals. The script is still being tweaked just a little bit. But besides St. Augustine, Florida, Pennsylvania has really been our state of choice right now.
And is Pennsylvania has sort of versatile terrain, or is it almost all hilly and beautiful trees?
A lot of the state is hilly and forest, but obviously you got Philly, you got Pittsburgh. There's a lot of small towns. Scranton is gorgeous. It reminds me of Buffalo if you've ever been there, so it reminds me of home. So there are a lot of different areas there, a lot of different people, and so it gives you variety, which I like.
And then the beauty of that is you can maybe go back to the same businesses for catering or different things or lodging. Exactly. And have an existing relationship.
Yeah, that's why having a town that wants to support several of your films right off the bat, then you can start doing those kind of deals and being like, well, we would like to shoot Karen's film in the spring of 2025, and then Recluse, which would hopefully be in Scranton in the fall of 2025. And then in 2026, we're looking to shoot at least 2 films, possibly 4. And then we are hoping that we will do 2 feature films after that every single year up through 2029.
Do you have that planned out that far in advance?
We have pretty lofty...
That's great.
Yeah. We'll see if that can happen, but we are making every stride possible to talk to as many people as possible to make it happen.
Feeling it will. Oh, that's great. Wow, 2029. That's really cool. No, I mean I'm not even sure what's happening next year. Sorry, that's awesome.
This is how planned I am and how tunnel vision I am, for better or worse.
Oh, I think it's great.
Thanks.
What steps do you take to raise money for the films?
So at the early stages, when I did my first short film, My Name Is, we went for what my partner says, the low-hanging fruit, which basically means family and friends. And that's pretty much how we raised it for that film. And got it done, got a lot of accolades, which we were lucky in. We shot it in Buffalo, New York. My mom was the caterer because she did catering for a long time. The cast and crew were very happy. So a lot of deals like that were made as well to keep the budget reasonable. So after traveling around with My Name Is, that really brought me into the feature world to do Life After You with my friend Florencia Lozano, which I had explained, who was looking for a director. And because I had something under my belt and I had something to show and to pitch myself to the producer team, they agreed to bring me on board, and that's how I got that job. And then we did the festival thing again. Both of us won awards. That's how I found the funding. The funding for Life After You was pretty much already there, so I got lucky with that. For my second feature film, A Stage of Twilight, I do LinkedIn a lot, and I pay a lot of attention to LinkedIn, and it feels like my online resume. And I put a lot of work into it, and a random angel investor liked what I was doing, had seen some of my work, put a quarter of the budget in for A Stage of Twilight, because also he loves Karen Allen and favorite actor of his, so that didn't hurt. And so once that initial money came in, it enticed other people that we were talking to, because that one person, made the commitment, and Karen was already committed. And when we brought William Sadler onto the project, it kind of snowballed, and we got really lucky with that. And then for the third project, that same investor put in half of the budget because he liked the movie so much. And that just helped other potential investors we had been having conversations with. And that film is called Crybaby Bridge. It's a psychological thriller that we shot last year. We're currently having conversations with different distribution companies. We've decided that we're not going to do the festival circuit this time. We want to have a deal in place prior to releasing the film. We're trying to change things up a little bit and work with bigger distribution companies. So I'm trying to find that deal. But in terms of raising the money, it came in.
And so this was just from a few LinkedIn posts where you were letting people know the project and that you had Karen Allen attached? Mm-hmm. Wow, and the person saw it. That's fascinating.
Yeah, and it honestly started off just being like, oh, that's cool that you're doing this. And I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty pumped. And we had two totally different industries, but the thing we had in common was football. I'm a Buffalo Bills fan. I'm one of those psycho people that breaks tables. It's not true. But they were not a Buffalo Bills fan, but I do respect their team. And so we just started talking about football and lived in different areas of the country and just became friends. And I wanted them to be the one to ask me. I knew that they could invest, but I prefer that people come to me. I have no problem asking people. But if I want it to feel like it's a 50-50, like it's a win-win situation, like they want to be part of this. They want to be on the calls. They want to see the whole process unwind and it's not just about their money and me taking it. That just feels icky. It's like, no, I want this to be an experience for you that you enjoy, and we do this together as a team.
Yeah, you had talked in another podcast, which was great, about how, filmmakers being very excited about their projects will just kind of do this information dump in these emails.
Ugh.
And it can, it does show at times that people are organized, but it can be too much. And you had talked about it felt like, quote, like a money grab. And I can see how that could seem that way.
If you're going to be an investor with a film, you're going to be part of this relationship for quite a while. So you better like the people that you're working with. And similar to your question or my motto, do no harm, take no crap. I feel that same way with anybody that I work with. We have a no mean person motto, and it doesn't matter if that person is willing to give a lot of money, invest a lot of money into a project. If they're not a likable individual, I don't want to be in a relationship with them. It's not worth it. So I think that's important.
If you're a writer or director on a project, do you include your salary in the movie budget?
Absolutely. Yeah, I have to get paid.
Sure.
I have, this is my job. This is my side job. This is my day job. And writing, yeah, everybody on our film sets get paid. And they don't get paid super well yet, but they get paid livable wages. And I've never been the type of producer that wanted to pay people with pizza, because I understand how hard it is to keep a roof over your head. And if you have kids, take care of your kids, or, furry kids, furry babies. So absolutely I get paid, and it's not an exorbitant amount. I think Brian and I broke it down one day, and we were just like laughing at like all the hours that we put in and what it comes out to on an hourly wage. But yes, I get paid.
Sure, but some people, they're not 9-to-5ers, and then they can just come back and just kick back and watch TV. There has to be something that they are driven to do. And so there's a trade-off. I get it. Mm-hmm. A lot of things in the arts are that way. Where if you broke down the time that you actually spent on it, it would be like you're getting maybe below minimum wage. I don't know. I'm just assuming. But is it worth it to you to get up every day to do something, to clock in for someone else, or to clock in for yourself?
Yeah, we're our own bosses, and that's nice. And it's nice not to have to answer to other people. I mean, we collaborate with other people, but we do it on our own time, and we work a lot. But it's really satisfying, and it's our own choice. There have been so many. I don't want to say there have been so many. There have been people, and this goes again with my motto, with wolf in sheep's clothing. There have been people that want to send their screenplay, get it evaluated, get a budget done, figure out all the stuff that producers do. A lot of times, honestly, it's just people thinking that we're made of money, and we're not. It doesn't work that way. But the people that do understand, what are my chances? Do you think the script is good? How much would this cost? What would this look like? And that information, that's artistic license information right there that we have had to teach ourselves over many years. And there is a fee that comes with that, but it's not a huge fee. It's not anything unacceptable. And so many people just expect that they're going to be getting that information for free, or that it should be our duty to. And it's like, I've had to work really hard, and so has my partner, and the sacrifices that we've had to have for that information. So I believe that everybody who works hard should get paid.
And so someone will send you their script and kind of want you to plug in numbers, almost like you're a tax preparer that's putting in, like, this is the refund you'll get back, sort of thing?
Yeah.
Wow, that's fascinating. Do they let you know up front, or they...
It's usually those dumps of information where I can tell like AI wrote it. It's like, hi, Sarah T. I just wrote, this is the synopsis of blah, 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 blah. It's going to be great because blah, 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 blah. And then it's just like a book and I'm just like, no, write me a human email. Maybe I'll look, I'll look at it and I'll answer and I might say no, but at least I will do the respect that you gave to me, or give you the respect that you gave to me.
Will you start filming a movie if you've not raised all the money?
We want most of the money raised, and I would say 70 to 80% of the money needs to be raised for us to greenlight filming a movie. Because at that point, you can pay almost everybody. You might have to put the post-production on pause if you don't. But a lot of times, if we have to raise some extra funds, it's a great opportunity to get behind the scenes footage when you're actually shooting a film and sending it to potential investors that are on the fence. You can also invite them to set to see what's going on and to see some footage that's being shot. So it's always rolled in our favor, I would say, if we've had to do that. But I obviously would prefer everything be in the bank at that point.
And does it seem like a lot of the would-be investors, that's a big draw for them, is to be part of the actual, or just to see this, how the sausage is made, for lack of a better term?
Yeah,
it's exciting.
In our experience, we've wanted a lot of hands-on investors, and that doesn't mean the type of investors that want to control everything, but they want to understand how everything works from the start till the end. It's a really curious business, and there's a lot of layers to it, constantly shifting and moving, and especially in distribution nowadays, that has been shifting a lot since COVID, and there's all sorts of deals that are going on in the distribution world, and so keeping up constantly with that. If an investor, which a lot of them are, have leanings toward our business model and how we do things, I think that's fascinating for them to understand how we take things and what happens after that you actually have a product. So yeah, it's...
Sure, especially too if a lot of the investors are not necessarily in the film world.
Yeah.
But they know the risks and they want to become part of a production.
Yeah, we're very clear with everybody. And if they have any questions, we are always available to be on the phone as often as they want. Like monthly or bi-monthly newsletters are sent out to all the investors on an individual project to just let everybody know where we're at. So we're very transparent with everything.
And have you ever been tempted to do crowdfunding or last resort credit cards?
We haven't done credit cards. We have worked with a fiscal sponsorship, the Film Collaborative, is whom we've been working with on, on all of our projects we worked with them. As we've been moving along, we've been getting less and less donations, and we've been getting more and more investments. So I don't know if we're going to be using like fiscal sponsorship. It's something that Brian and I are talking about, just to see if that's still useful for where we're at right now, and especially if we can make some sort of deal with a distribution company early on. And get that investment up front, then it changes kind of how we do things. So we're a little bit in the middle right now, and just kind of fluid about what's going to happen next.
When you're submitting to film festivals, are you using a private link to send the film? Mm-hmm. And is it just for that one festival?
Yes. People have the option, if they go on there and look around, you can just send the link to that festival, which is what I usually do because it's easier for them to give it to whoever the screener people are going to be, the screener to the people who are going to be evaluating the film. You also have the option to send a screener a link with a password protected. But to me, if they're just going to send the same thing to anybody who's evaluating. So usually I just send the link and just trust that they're not going to send it out to anybody.
Okay. We recently spoke to a filmmaker who submitted his movie to 30 film festivals, and his movie was only watched 8 times according to the clicks on the screeners. What do you think about that?
I've been through it. And we keep an eye on that. I don't like it at all. I just think it's, that's a money grab. That's, yeah. I don't, I'm not gonna bad name any festivals, but after I saw that does happen, that's why I think it's so smart for people to make connections, talk to other people who have gone through it, talk to this person that you're talking about, ask if they've had any bad. This is why going to film festivals is great, but you have to go to the film festival to make these connections. But there's all sorts of different ways that you can meet people. Like LinkedIn is a great source. Instagram, I'm not a huge fan of Instagram personally, just because, I don't know, not my generation. I like to write a book.
Well, it's very selfie-driven too.
Yeah.
Or it's more pictures and reels and things, yeah.
But I think it's really important, though, to ask around and to be like, I heard that this happened to somebody. If you want to keep it private, has anyone else had the same experience? If so, what festivals? And do you have any good festivals that you, that actually, even if you didn't get in, did they watch the film 8 to 10, 12 times, So, because it shows all of that on Film Freeway. Or, I'm sorry, on Vimeo. On Vimeo.
Sure. Do you know how soon it registers a view? What if they watched it and go, oh, this isn't for me, but then they shouldn't be taking the film, but do you know at what point does it register?
I don't know. I've never worked, I don't want to say for them because I've never worked at a film festival, and I think that every film festival does it a little differently. I do know that only watching a film or not watching a film at all is very infuriating. It feels like a complete disrespect to filmmakers who work so hard and to not even give it a chance. That's just the most disrespectful thing you can do.
Sure. Or I could just say maybe they didn't watch it and then they accept you. I realize there's
Yeah.
a gray line with that, but...
Yeah, it's tricky. They are trying to make money too, and but that shouldn't be their only purpose. They should be, everybody's got to keep a roof over their head. It matters if for the reasons why they're doing it as well. And it seems to me that if you don't watch it and you just don't accept it, or you don't watch it and do accept it, both would be a little hanky.
Sure. Why do you like submitting to film festivals?
I love submitting to film festivals because I've had some of the best experiences at film festivals, meeting other artists around the world, getting to, and I still have friends all over the world, and getting to watch their magic and to see how they did it and what complications they went through and risks and what things they were proud of, and I don't know. I love it. I would have to say, and I don't want to pick favorites, but I have to say Woods Hole, Sonoma, and the Berkshires are my 3 favorite film festivals that I've ever gone to, and I don't know, but for short films, there are a lot of festivals that you wouldn't think of that are Oscar qualifying if you win at the festival. And so when applying to festivals, at least for short films, we were always very cognizant of, when we were putting our list together and putting our budget together, which of those film festivals were Oscar qualifying. So for short film, filmmakers out there. I think that's really important to keep in the back of your mind, especially because you're going to have limited funds. And then for feature films, there are less opportunities. There are more of those really big ones that you think of, like Sundance and TIFF, Toronto International Film Festival, Berlin, Cannes, South by, those types of festivals. That's really, if you can get into one of those festivals, that's good. And if you can get into the other festivals, there's a lot of amazing other huge festivals out there. But those are really like the ones that are talked about the most in popular publications. But yeah, it's just the relationships that I love so much and the memories that I have about going. And unfortunately, it can be a little pricey. So the festivals that do take care of their artists, by finding them housing, asking local people to, if they have a spare bedroom, can you host this filmmaker for 3 days or 4 days or whatever? And just doing little things like that. And I think that's why Woods Hole, Berkshires, and Sonoma all stood out to me, because I felt so taken care of while we were there, and they're just great people, and you can tell that they're great communities too, that care about art.
That's fascinating. I didn't know that there would be like a host family, almost like an exchange student. Wow.
Yep. Yeah.
That's really cool. Mm-hmm. When you are raising money for a film, are you setting aside funds for film festivals?
Yes. It's part of the initial budget. You have to understand, if you want to submit to films, you have to do your due diligence and go to sites like filmfreeway.com and research which festivals you want to go to and why. If you get in, how much it's going to be to apply. If you get in, do you want to go to that festival? How much are flights? Where are you going to stay? Do they help you at all? It's those type of questions that go into the film festival line items in the budget. So yes, absolutely, you have to be thinking about everything.
And looking at your Twitter for Cardinal Flicks, it seems like you have traveled a lot. Were most of these local? I think Sonoma was one of them, but most of them are on the East Coast, and it's easier?
Yeah, a lot of them are on the East Coast because I can drive to them. There's been festivals, Calgary up in Canada I couldn't go to because we were filming our third feature at the time. I would have loved to go to Calgary. It's beautiful. But we've gone down to like Fort Lauderdale before. I did go to Sedona. I got stuck down there in some, over there. I'm lost where we are in the world right now. But Sedona was wonderful. Again, one of those great festivals that took care of us. And I was going to fly to Santa Fe, or drive to Santa Fe, because Karen Allen was with me at both of those festivals. And she flew because she's smart, and I drove because I wanted to see the mountains, and I got stuck in Camp Verde because all of the mountain roads had been shut down because it was so windy and it was blowing tractor trailers off the road. So I spent my Santa Fe Film Festival in a Holiday Inn with Denny's glowing as the moon outside my window.
Sounds like a country western song.
Yeah.
That's good. How important is it to get to know the people behind the festivals, the programmers, the people who work there?
I love getting to know everybody. Their job is very hard also. It's a lot of planning, a lot of managing things, a lot of stress on their end, especially if it's a really good film festival. And a lot of the people that I've met care about, I keep using this word community, but it's really at the forefront of what my partner, and Cardinal Flicks believes in is community. And I like to meet those people that believe in bringing good art to their community. And so I think it's important that way. I like to know how they think about films and what films they bring in. And also, it's good because if you form a good relationship with them, there's a good chance that they'll at least take a look at your next film and consider it if you had some form of relationship. And that doesn't mean pulling favors. It's just you at least know your film's going to be looked at. In terms of distribution and how film festivals can help you, because none of my films have gotten in those really top film festivals where Variety will cover, Hollywood Reporter will cover all the time, unless a film has got like serious buzz and then they go to another smaller film festival. A lot of those bigger publications don't often. Sometimes they'll go to those festivals just to see how it does or keep up with it and somehow. I think it's more of those publications that help with distribution, but I could be wrong. Again, I've never worked at a festival, so I don't know the ins and outs. But the other good thing about meeting everybody, and not just the people who are in charge of it, but it's like the production assistants or the volunteers that are there, that I love meeting as well. And two great examples that happened both in Woods Hole a few years ago. There was a young man who I believe was in his first year of film school. And because Woods Hole is so small, I brought my electronic scooter with me, and I just scooted all over the place. And
awesome.
This young man was housing where everybody could like buy a T-shirt or could get the passes for what movies were going to be playing. And I always asked, can I put my scooter behind there so I could just walk around? And he was always like, yeah. And then so we just got to chit-chatting, and I asked him where he was going to school, what he wanted to do. And it was just it was just happening that we were going to be shooting our third feature, Crybaby Bridge, in, I don't know, 3 or 4 months. And I was like, you want to be a PA? And he's like, yeah. I'm like, all right, write down your email. And of course he wrote like chicken scratch, 19-year-old. And I'm like, all right, what is your email? But he ended up being just so hardworking and lovely. And all of the connections that he made on that set, he's gone on to get a bunch of gigs. I've been kind of keeping up with him. So there are examples like that I love to meet everybody, because it's like if you can help them, it's like, well, then, they're helping you and you get them gigs, and it's all about connections.
Right, and what we talked about being able to connect with people that aren't in the film industry versus those that are, and sometimes the people that you do know in the film industry, then you all go your separate ways, but now you're meeting kind of like-minded people that know the struggles and can appreciate independent film. And it's always interesting to be sitting next to someone at one, and then you kind of turn to you, and then yeah, it's just like you feel like, okay, yeah, you're my kind. Yeah, I know you. I may not know you, but I know you somehow.
Yeah, I appreciate that people go to film school. There's a part of me that wishes I could have at least had a semester to know a little bit more before diving in. But there's also a part of me that's really happy that I didn't go to film school, because I could come in with a blank slate and watch other people do it, like just doing it. And when I have a production designer being like, go to the store and go get me light bulbs, and I'm like, what kind of light bulbs? Blah, 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 blah. And it's like, there's just the chaos of the moment. And then you're a PA and you're cooking up eggs because there's a breakfast scene, and then you're clearing plates, and then you're the script supervisor because you're keeping continuity of everybody's forks and knives. And it's like you learn on the moment. And there have been a few PAs that have fell in love with the industry that way as well, and that is what makes them want to go to film school. But they still prefer to be on set.
I think you had said on your first film that your cinematographer kind of asked you about a shot list or something, and then she did it in a loving way, said, let me kind of give you a couple key tips.
Yeah, her name is Laura Kell, and I haven't worked with her. I only worked with her on that one set, but we were getting close to shooting. We knew it was going to be a 3-day shoot. I was writer, director, producer, production designer, script supervisor. No, I wasn't the script supervisor. Thank goodness I had somebody else do that. I don't know, I was something else. Oh, the wardrobe person on top of it. So 7 jobs, slept 2 hours a night for 4 days straight. So I knew the basics of what each person had to do, but when we were getting close to shoot, Lara was like, "Are you ready to make a shot list?" I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "What's that?" And she was just like, and she sat me down and explained to me what a shot list was, because I also didn't know what the numbers next to the scene meant, which helps make a shot list. And I didn't know what a gaffer was. I didn't, I didn't know what a grip was. I'm like, what are they gripping? And it was just like all this stuff that I learned on the job. And thankfully, there was a really great group of people that no one made fun of me. And it was a really, really good learning experience. So yeah, I got lucky.